Well, I think there's a program I could take. What are you concerned about?
Thing is, all is well in the land of Middleton. Yeah, especially the high school.
Oh, yeah.
There's no disasters.
No, nothing. Thank
Kids
goodness.
came home the other day. Eddie next door got busted for screwing around in the computers and breaking into them. Perfect. So I just showed people how.
Well, that's the problem. I think sometimes we don't really account
I'm like,
how intelligent.
I'm on a hacking class. Break stuff.
Well, that's just a shame. When they have to go Guardian, they do. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm sure you're right. Whatever.
Whatever you said. Sounds good.
Jake, if I pass a little bit of that rec center discussion to you as far as how we came up with an idea for that,
The rec center.
like the contract, just how we were gonna do that, like a floating.
Yeah.
If I can just, well, I'm just saying float it to describe.
He has a lot to talk about. There's
Yeah.
30 pages of bill. 30 pages of bill.
Yeah, you got
Not a lot. Okay, we are good to go whenever you are.
Is it 6? I have 2 minutes.
Oh, you have 2 minutes.
And I'm gonna take them.
Yeah, for sure.
But just remember the
Mics are on.
yeah, so the mics are live right now.
Gotcha.
I wonder if I didn't hit send yet. Yeah, I didn't hit send yet. 1 second.
This is not attached and simply, is it?
No, because we have the meeting this afternoon and I'll explain kind
I
of
just
the,
wanted to make sure that.
yeah.
It was a 2-year renewable every year.
And then still a way to get out with 90 days.
I wish it was here. Here. I would just see it all this.
Okay.
Will we come back January 2nd?
Okay, so if I move quick.
I think we should. How do you vote? I don't agree with that. I don't think starting to.
Yeah. Only the FFA request. The FFA.
I haven't gotten a lot of feedback.
Sorry, you're.
Sorry.
Where did you do a survey?
I don't know if I've seen any. I mean, it's been pretty standard.
No, did you do a current survey of the activity?
So they were just setting this up to try and lock in some start and end dates, but we don't even know now what that looks like now with the state legislation.
Yeah,
So
we're waiting.
it's kind of just up in the air a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, I know this is not a finalized thing that I don't like starting them. I don't know why. Why can't we go into the?
Yep. Are we on?
Some vacations.
Are we good?
Screws up.
Right now, we'll get it. Yes, we're ready.
Hey, I would like to welcome everybody to our meeting tonight. Thank you so much for coming. We will start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, where's my agenda? Okay, thank you for coming. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I
right, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I move that we approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
I,
Aye. It's consent agenda. Is there any discussion on that? Anybody have questions? Nope. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second that.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Do we have any signed-in visitors?
Lisa's just checking, right?
Okay. Okay, perfect. While we're doing that, I would just excuse Derek Moore. He could not make it tonight.
Let's see, Samantha? You here to, okay. Afterwards, we'll have you, no,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
sorry, we just don't have the full sheet, so we'll probably need her to fill that out afterwards.
okay.
Yeah.
That works. Hi, come, podium's right over there. That way you can address us and kind of the audience as well.
All right, thank you for allowing me time today. I just have a question. Is the Terramore subdivision by Challenger Development and Star being taken into consideration for future middle and high school expansions? The development that will sit north of State between Kingsbury and Blessinger is currently slated to have one Middleton School District elementary within the subdivision. However, with 455 single-family homes, 250 townhomes, and an apartment complex with 112 units, one elementary school does not seem sufficient for a potential influx of students this large. Is there a plan for expansion at the current schools, or will the district need to build all new middle and high schools to accommodate this new development, in addition to the other new developments within the city of Hicks?
Thank you. We can't really talk about that, but I appreciate you bringing that up because that is something that, go ahead.
Well, you can,
I would appreciate, yes,
well, I was just gonna say, if she would like, I'm happy to,
yes, if you
About
would
that,
please sit down with Dr. Gee,
Absolutely.
he could address that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Can I ask Samantha? What was,
That's-
Samantha, what was the name of that subdivision?
Terramore.
It's Terramore. It's off the State between Blessinger and Kingsbury.
Okay, I knew where it was. I just haven't seen the name, Terramore. And then how, apartment complex, how many was there?
112.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
and Mrs. Pennington will give you the paper that you need to fill out. And then if you'll hand that, I'll make sure and reach out to you and we can go through some of those details.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, we're good. I'll give you that back. Thank you. All right. Let's move on to discussion items. Someone's having fun. Discussion item A. Are you doing that one?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So we have the Middleton FFA group that is looking to head to Twin Falls for their convention and leadership contest. It's like their state competition. And where it's an overnight trip, they just need to ask for that permission from the board to make that trip. If there's any questions on this is one that happens each year. And because it's not, our policy allows for the athletics schedule to be put out with that, with overnight trips, not needing board approval, just the schedule itself. Our other activities do require that kind of approval. So
Perfect.
any questions on it?
Just running through how many kids are going?
23.
23. I noticed $170 cost. Is that per kid?
Yes.
For individual.
Yep.
It's the same leadership convention we had even in the 80s. It was in Twin Falls also, yeah.
Moving on up.
If you looked at the actual agenda, they're busy
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're going the full day, each day.
each day, yeah.
That's fun.
Very cool.
It's very intense, but a lot of great stuff. That's where they have like competition for speeches, different kinds of speeches, all the state leadership stuff that goes on there. It's
Yeah, they
great.
work for their degrees, their state
Yeah.
degree and
Yep.
And then that last one talked about that, who was getting what.
It's a very good program. We appreciate our FFA. Thank you. Any more questions? All right, let's move on to Mr. Hollinger. You are up.
Pass that back down to me.
Is there a clicker or just I'll just tell you that? Okay. All right. Thank you for having me present today. I asked Mark kind of what you were looking for, and he said, just any highlights from the year, things that we want the community to know. And that's really hard to narrow down because we've had a really phenomenal year. And so students who are here and our community members who are here, if there's something I forgot this year, I apologize. I didn't want to take up the whole meeting, but I feel like I easily could have because there's just so much going on, and so many great things going on. So we have this big goal, and at the beginning of the year, we met with our leadership team. So our leadership team is made up of our admin team, teacher leaders at the school, counselors, and we decided we wanted to talk about like what's our overarching goal for the school, and with some push from me as well. But the big goal is to be the best high school in the state of Idaho. We just talk about that all the time. So if we go to the next slide, this is how we kind of broke down what we focus on this year to achieve that goal of becoming the best school in the state of Idaho. So the two big domains that the leadership team said we'd like to focus on is student engagement, culture, and spirit, and then academic excellence. And then we had kind of sub-goals that were like some quantitative things that we felt like we could do. Things like, let's improve our ISAT scores because we're compared to the rest of the state on ISATs, and the best school in the state should have really good ISAT scores. Our graduation rate should be high. Our GPAs should be good. On the student engagement side, we have a student engagement survey that we give, and you students took that at the end of last year. And there's a metric that we use called the NPS, and that metric we want to get to plus 40, which is like excellent. So we want our students to feel like we love being in our school. We feel like we belong here. We feel respected. We feel like we're growing, all those sorts of good things. And then the other goal was to really get our students involved in the school, and more than just coming to class, but being involved in something else. So this can be some sort of extracurricular, like a club or a sport or a musical group, some sort of organization at the school besides just being a student at Middleton High School. So those are our big goals. And so this presentation will kind of focus on the things that we're trying to do to achieve those goals. And we can go to the next one. Every meeting we start with at the school, though, we have this slide that comes up. We call it stacking bricks, because we feel like to build the best school that we have at the high school, or to build the best school, it's going to be brick by brick. So these bricks that we talk about is obviously a metaphor. We focus on just the small things that are happening every day at the school, or maybe a one-off thing that's building us up to be the best school. So just as I was driving over here, I thought of at least one. We had, and some of you I think were in this meeting today, we had the lieutenant governor at the school today, which was a pretty neat opportunity. We brought a couple of our government classes down, and it was a neat educational experience. He was trying to get them to write their senators about, some directive of his, but then our students had the chance to talk to the lieutenant governor, and I thought they represented our school incredibly well. I was super impressed. They asked him some pointed questions. They conversed with him. It was really impressive. And so those opportunities, I thought it reflected well on our community as a whole, our school as a whole, our government, teachers, and you as students. So that was kind of one of those brick things that we'd like to talk about. So we can go to the next one though. All right, so talking about student engagement. This is just one example of student engagement at the school. We got a ton of kids out for our extracurricular activities. So this is obviously a student section at a football game. You can see similar student sections at basketball and other events. We have a ton of students participate in extracurricular activities, and I love that about our school. If you go in to the school right now, the track team has over 100 kids out for track. We have a ton of participation, and I love that. And we've had success as well. Just even this winter, we had all five of our teams made it to state that could make it to state, which is really impressive because we're competing at the highest level in the state level, which is great. We can keep going. Another thing we've done for student engagement is really push joining clubs. And for students, we told them if there's not a club you want to join, start one. We've had, I think, 17 now clubs that have been started this year alone. We have over 40 clubs / organizations that students can be a part of. And we've really pushed out. We've done these things we call them club rushes. We've done them twice this year, where the clubs set up, they recruit people, that's been really successful. We see a huge uptick in students participating in clubs like DECA, or we have a crochet club, we have a fishing club, we have all sorts of interests, Star Wars club, where they go and they fight lightsabers at lunchtime, and other kids watch. It's pretty fun. So there's things that can like better, improve your career, or you can just have fun with some friends. But I truly believe that engagement in something like a club leads to better results in the classroom because they feel like they belong at the school, they feel like they have a place. If they're at ease in that regard, then they'll be a better student and learn better. We can keep going. This was from homecoming week. This is our Powder Puff event. I thought it was the highlight of the year. Not just Powder Puff, but just homecoming in general. I love those opportunities where our community comes together, and I felt like it really did during homecoming. Even if we got some complaints about the Powder Puff event from the neighbors. We were a little loud that day, but it was fun nonetheless. We can keep going. Thank you. This was a really neat thing that has got started this year. The unified, what do we call it? It's not just unified sports, it's the unified program. So what it is special education students, general education students coming together and working to just, well, we have a sports team, so we have a unified basketball team, there'll be unified track, and they go and they get to compete against other schools. And then also being part of the unified school is that you also have other programs to kind of lift up the special education programs at your school. So now we have three students on IEPs who are in our student council class as well. So they're more integrated in the school and have more opportunities to be involved in the school. It enriches the lives of those special education students, but it also enriches the whole school, I believe. And we've definitely seen that. The shift, this is our new student section, the branding of our student section. This was kind of spearheaded by our ASB president, Lincoln Allen, who's done a really phenomenal job this year in kind of leading that idea of having more spirit and culture at the school. So this is the logo, that's the name of it. So we gave out, 1,000 shirts this year with the name, the ship on it. It's been fun to see the students embrace that, and just another way to kind of unify the student body. These are two events that I wanted to highlight. We obviously have so many different events going on at the school. One, parent engagement night. When I came here, I can't remember if it was Mark that told me or somebody told me kind of towards the end of the first semester, like, hey, you're supposed to do something to replace parent-teacher conferences. And I was like, oh crap, we didn't plan anything. I didn't know about this. And I was kind of just told, like, we had to find something else that would engage the community, but it's not parent-teacher conferences. So our leadership team again came up with this idea to have this parent engagement night, and it ended up being really successful. It was an opportunity for the community and parents to come in and see all the programs and classes and things that we had to offer at the school. So if you went, it had really good energy at this night. There was, booths set up for each class and each club and organization. The teachers really liked it, and we got a lot of good feedback from community members and parents who came and said, this was awesome. I was able to see all the opportunities. It wasn't just going and talking to the teachers. They got to do that, but they also got to see, oh, my son could take, sports medicine next year, or they could be in floriculture, all these different programs that we have to offer all in one place. The energy was really good. It was a good success. And I'm glad that we got to do that, and I think it'll just continue to grow next year. This one as well is another kind of way to bring our community together, the small town throwdown. I think probably some of you were there. It was incredible. Our students really responded well. It was a competition with Kuna High School and another small town in our conference, and we dominated them. We kicked their butts at it, but so that was worthwhile. But it was just super fun to see our students really get into it. Our community embraced it. The gym looked amazing. It was a really fun night, and again, another chance to bring that kind of student engagement. We can go to the next one.
Thank you for that. It was fun.
Yeah, it was super fun. I had a blast. So the next domain is academic excellence. We can keep going. We can go to the next slide.
Fading slowly.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
That's bad formatting on my part, I'm sorry. We completed our accreditation this year, which is important because if we're gonna give you guys diplomas, we have to be an accredited institution. And so that's good for the next 6 years. I need to shout out Mitchell Hill. I tasked him with doing it, coming in as a new principal. I'd done an accreditation before at my previous school. I knew how much work it would take, and I didn't feel like I was up to it, also being a new principal. So Mitchell Hill, one of the assistant principals, took that on and did a really fantastic job. And with his team as well. And they were incredibly thorough and organized, and the Cognia, the organization that does our accreditation, was very impressed. We'll get the official, their write-up here in the next few weeks, I believe. Is what they told us. But we're happy to be done with that, and that's good for the next 6 years. Curriculum adoption, also we thank Paige Gibson, who's in here. That's been going on, well, they just finished up, and very pleased with, and are you reporting on that today, Paige? So you'll learn more about that in just a minute here, but we're really pleased from the high school end, the support that we've seen for curriculum adoption. Instruction, so this has been a focus of ours this year. My belief and our belief as a school is just that teachers, and having good teachers who have the resources that they need and the support they need is the most important factor for having an effective school. And so we really tried to pour a lot into our teachers. And we've been fortunate, we've received a lot of support from the district in doing this, and by extension the board obviously, with instructional specialists, with time for PD for teachers. And then as an administration team, we've also tried to really be visible in teachers' classes and be supportive. Our goal is to be in 2 classes a day, which is difficult at times, but that's our goal. And we really want to be there just to work with teachers, to coach them, to help them. And I've seen our teachers respond. I really think they're trying to up their game. And these are just a couple of things that instructional specialists have worked with our teachers on this year. We always have different areas of focus. One big one this year is just closing in the class. So yeah, instruction has been a big focus of ours. And we can keep going. And again, that slow fade. We have some new opportunities this year. We have a health occupation CTE pathway that is being developed. That we have an amazing teacher, Jenna Coburn, who's helping us with that. We have construction available now, which is really exciting. That's this year, and then we have potential more of these sorts of classes or more new opportunities coming up in the next year and so on, between potentially new AP courses, reading intervention opportunities for our students, more CT, like a CTE math course, and lots more that I think you're also discussing today with our new courses, potential new courses. Teacher of the year, the reason I just highlighted this is because we just have such amazing teachers. We do have a process that we're going to do for teacher of the year, so we'll be announcing that soon here. We have our 3 finalists for that though. They will be announced to students here soon. They'll have the chance, and staff will have a chance to vote on that. So we're really excited for that opportunity to recognize all of our amazing teachers, but one specific teacher of the year. We're also doing a classified employee of the year, and we've selected that person. We'll announce that at the same time. So we're really excited for the chance to recognize some of our amazing staff members at the high school. And then of course, coming up we have graduation. That was last year's, obviously. You guys get excited. It's May 22nd at 6:30, I believe, same location. So we're looking forward to that, and obviously having you there with us. Mark mentioned if there's any mention of challenges. We don't have a ton. We're incredibly supported, and so I felt it feels kind of nitpicky to mention any of these. And really, these are very, very minimal issues. There's always a need for more space. Even at the high school, there's times where it's like, oh, we'd like an additional space for this program we're trying to do. That's okay, and we're sharing some space with the district, different district employees. So we understand that we can share, but it'd be always nice to have a bit more space. With the high school, obviously it's still a very new building, but some of those materials like desks and teacher chairs, things like that, they're starting to wear out, and so it's just finding the funds to replenish that sort of stuff. We want to keep our building nice. Or for example, the auditorium, it's a really beautiful auditorium, but sound equipment and things just gets old. And so it's just figuring out, okay, where do we find the funds to replace that sort of stuff? Then more teachers, I'd love more FTE and more teachers, but I know that's what it look like. That's all. The last slide, I think, should be the last slide. It's just a thank you. Thank you. I felt so supported this year coming in as a new principal. I know at the school, we feel incredibly supported by our board, by our district. And so we're really grateful. We see you at all sorts of events, and that's really, it's special to be in a place like Middleton where you see the board constantly. To know I can come up and chat with any of you. You're friendly and you're involved in the community, so we really appreciate that. So thank you. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you. You should have brought the jackalope to show everybody.
Oh, I should have. Oh, see, I was thinking that. I realized I forgot. We have stickers for you as well.
Okay.
Whenever, these are stickers that our students get if they're not tardy for a month, then they each get a sticker or one of these special stickers. Yeah. Yes. So,
My kids are always tardy. They don't.
so get some. So see, now they can get some stickers though. So yeah, of course.
Oh,
They're doing a trade.
want that one?
Anything done now.
We have stickers. Sorry, everybody.
It was right on my old truck. Like 1970 market that road.
Non-tardy stickers.
I'm wondering, like, that you're like very loved, Middleton.
I have a similar one.
A bear hug. You need a hug. Here's your hug. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Come find me, I'll give you a sticker. You're telling the truth. There's an entire row.
They gave me a sticker, I didn't go on.
Okay.
All right, let's move on. And you're already ready to go, so
I am.
the floor is yours.
Yeah, let's start with new courses, Mrs. Pennington, if you don't mind. Sorry. You're good. I think that's the next one. on
There's quite a few of them.
agenda.
I think you are right, yes.
There you go. Perfect. All right, so, board policy is that when we add new courses or we have significant course revisions, that they come before the board for you to approve. We begin this process at the end of December when we start working with our administrators and ask, are you looking for any new courses, modifications? And so the high school, as Mr. Hollander said, has some really exciting opportunities. One of those is a reading intervention class. We have on the math side several different supports in place, and so this is a really good next step for the reading end of our students. And we had a really great meeting today with his teacher about what this could look like and how we transition kids from 8th grade into 9th grade. And so that was a really wonderful discussion. Next on the high school's docket is a filmmaking class. This is would be for an elective credit where students can learn different filmmaking techniques. So since we don't have the video productions class anymore, this has been a gap that Mr. Hollander has identified within his building. Also an art workshop. This is a really exciting opportunity for the entire school because the idea behind it is that the art class can become in-house design services for Middleton High School to be able to create t-shirts and stickers and all of the wonderful things that you see. So another great growth opportunity and a real life experience for
So
them.
what is it like, the idea behind this being like physical drawing, converting into digital, that kind of stuff?
That, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Any of the above.
That's
I
fine.
think it's got the potential to be a lot of different pieces as the building sees fit. At the academy, one of the new courses that we'd like to add is an algebra and geometry essentials, and those are for students who come in with maybe a higher gap than what we're normally used to seeing. And so this is going to provide us the opportunity to scaffold, maybe slow things down a little bit for those students who are in need of those. So basic course description, one's just focused on algebra and one's focused on geometry. At the middle school level, one of the things that Idaho Code is requiring is that we have a career exploration class for our students, which ties in very nicely with the direction of our career paths that we're looking at. And so what I wanted to present you with how we're fulfilling that requirement. And so the middle school will be using the 3 domains of the First Step standards and really utilizing all 3 of their grade levels. So it's not that we wait until the 8th grade year to start presenting these ideas. They're really getting snippets of it through their VICE class, through a 6th grade exploratory And then it all culminates during their senior year, when they create that career plan and really focus on transitioning to high school.
Is this something where it's just like a class period during the year, or is this gonna be addressed multiple times, or is this a class in and of itself?
Multiple different ways. Sixth grade is an exploratory class that all students will cycle through, and then through the bikes program, they have that class period every morning. And so they'll be getting that embedded within that. So it's not like it's a one and done conversation. It should be an ongoing piece of their career exploration. And then we have some dual credit opportunities that we're really excited about. This also feeds into some of the CTE pieces. One that we're looking at, and this would be for both the academy and the high school, is a Math 123, which they call on CW Math in Modern Society. We feel it's, math for technical careers for our students, that would help some of those credits transfer, like if we had an English 101, which we do, we have at the high school, a Comm 101 and a math credit, that helps our students be able to transition into a CTE field, having met some of those minimum requirements already that they can get straight from us. And then the last piece is an adjustment in the senior project. The state requires that a senior project have a research component and a speaking component, and a way that we would like to fulfill that is through our CTE pathways in the capstone course. So that would be the final course that our students take, and regardless of which CTE pathway they were in, the requirements would look very similar. Research including, but not limited to, a 4-hour job shadow. So they're really doing the research about the career they'd like to go into and how that CTE path helps them, and then a presentation on that. So those are the exciting pieces for 24 and 25 for the new courses. So
Sounds good.
there's a lot of good things happening.
Yes, there
Yeah, It's
are.
very exciting.
Thank you.
But any questions on those?
You have a question?
No.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, perfect. So now let's talk about the curricular resource adoption. Mr. Hollinger also spoke about this. We are adopting K-12 for 7 different content areas this year, which typically we'll do 1 content area, like last year's math. We did 7 this year. If you want to go to the next slide. This is more for our audience. Our board members already know this, but it is the board's responsibility. State statute requires that the board provide our students with suitable textbooks and supplies, and for the advice on textbook selections to have an adoption committee. So this is where I get tasked with putting a committee together to review curricular materials. So this is the process that we utilize as I get tasked with putting that committee together and facilitating it. Is we have an administrative commitment. When we approve a budget, we say, okay, here's what we can do. Here's how we're going to support our next textbook adoption. We put together a committee. The committee organizes, and we have a meeting where we set our norms and set our goals as a committee, and then we acquire samples. We assimilate the reviews. We did this just last month, and now we're at step 6, where we're going to submit the proposal to the board for school board approval. State code also requires that 50% of our committee be parents. So we had a rather large committee, given that we had 7 different content areas. It was nearly 40 people between teachers and staff. So we subcommitted out by content area on that one. But we also like to make sure that our curriculum leads, our department heads, and all of our teachers have input, so that everybody's voice gets heard. So we survey teachers. We work with our department heads, we have meetings, we get feedback from everybody. So it is quite a process. We start at the start of the year, and it's now culminating. Some of the questions that I get asked about why do we need curricular resource adoptions? Well, adoptions just don't include textbooks. They include things like supplies, materials, books, consumables, so think like microscopes, beakers, all of the things that we need to provide a really good student learning experience. The other reason that we need these adoptions is that, and frequently, is that textbook companies, they've shifted their models. So I can relate it to this when we all used to get Microsoft Office and you got it on a CD-ROM and you installed it and you had it forever, right? Until you decided that you were gonna get a new version. Well, now Microsoft Office is Microsoft Office 365, and they charge you a yearly subscription fee. It's the same thing with our textbook companies in that regard. So two ways that they have shifted that we've had to adapt to. I was used to getting the hardback textbook, right? You open it up, you see who had it the year before you. It's very different now. The textbook companies on a whole provide it as like a softbound student book that's a single time use. So students take notes in it. They can write different things, but it is really meant to be that single use. And then the other shift that companies have made is, we didn't have digital resources, obviously, when I was going through school, but we do now, and that is really helping prepare our students to be college and career ready, because there's not an industry that won't touch technology in some shape or form in any of the careers that they choose. And those are purchased on a license-based contract, meaning that when our 6 years is up, it's up. And so we have to renew in order to be able to provide our staff with the appropriate materials to educate our students. Same thing with the textbooks that are more on the consumable nature. They send them to us every year, and after 6 years, they'll stop sending them. So that's why we are on the 6-year cycle of renewing materials. One of the other questions is how do we fund this? And so $500,000 from not this last levy that we voted for, but the previous one is dedicated to a curriculum adoption specifically to fill the gap between what the state provides us and the actual cost that it takes to keep mixed up materials in that regard. And then why a 6-year adoption? Why do we pay for it all up front? Why don't we pay for it a year at a time? Number one, this provides a systematic implementation and commitment. Our teachers know they have this resource for 6 years. There's a lot of investment that goes in on their learning to be able to implement and integrate all of the resources. So they know that that's the resource for at least 6 years. From a financial end, multi-year contracts give us discounts, and it price locks us. So we don't see the inflationary price, for 6 years, as it can be pretty volatile. So those are just some questions that we get asked. This again shows the cycle of the phases. So you'll see this is we're in phase 1 with all of these different content areas, and we finished math last year. So it's just the continuing cycle that we put them through in phases. Next year will be ELA, followed by science, followed by CTE. So this is by far the largest adoption as far as content areas is concerned. And so with that, I've got the recommendation before you. Many of the resources stay the same. They're just updated versions of the resource. I'll speak to a few that have changed. PE stayed the same, however, they found a need for some additional resources for their advanced courses to really push those students. So that's where platform comes in. K-5 music is moving to Quaver music. They're very excited about that one. And Pam, you can speak to their excitement about it. Yes, yeah. And then 612 needs some recording software called Make Music. K-5 is moving to the Great Body Shop. The vendor, our previous vendor stopped supporting their curriculum, and so we needed to explore new options for the Great Body Shop. And that actually goes K through 5, and what they really like about it is it's got a monthly theme. Through all like K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1 month is going to be safety. So it can be a school-wide theme in that regard. The rest of Health 6, 8, 9, 12 stay the same, just with updated versions. I know it was really important to our health teachers to get those updated materials with the newest research on vaping. They want those types of pieces in there so that it's got newest research. For social studies, fourth grade's gonna stay with Idaho Adventure, and then K-5 is a primary resource, their social studies Alive resource, which they've been really looking forward to having, I think something that focuses specifically on the social studies standards. 611 social studies stay the same, just updated versions. So I believe the last books went through, I don't even know if they went through Obama's presidency. So again, history is always changing, so you need to get it updated to the newest presidency on that part. Government did make a shift to McGraw-Hill, and it is an AP government class, but we did double check, and that resource fits with the and dual credit requirements. So economics adjusted to a contemporary economics resource. Sociology and psychology, this is one where we do have the hard copy and there haven't been many updates, so the teachers are just fine with that and they're fine with the versions they have. So that is not gonna cost us anything. Everything else is really just an update. Sports med, when we adopted that pathway, that's one of our CTE pathways. We need to make sure we got resources in that teacher's hands. So you'll see level 1, level 2, level 3, and all levels. So this teacher will have access to those resources. For sign language, our teacher just requested some teacher-facing materials. Spanish is going with a new product that they feel will better meet some of the needs of the students as they see they're able to amp up the rigor. And art, primarily just some classroom resource books. I attached that as part of the board agenda, and then some durables. Each of the departments, PE, music, and art, requested some type of durable material. And so when we looked at the budget, what we're able to fund are the things that they identified as critical to teaching the curriculum.
Can you give an example of what that is? Just for the,
Yes. I'm
Would
processing
be like-
which best example that I can give you. Art middle school art needs a kiln.
Okay.
So that's something like, in order to teach
Mhm.
ceramics, you have to have the kiln.
yes,
So there's an example. The med photography class at our high school level needs cameras. They've been using cell phones. So to have a professional digital camera is going to open up some more opportunities. Those were identified as critical items for them to be able to teach. We still have the list of their high priorities, medium and low, that we'll look for maybe some other ways or some grant opportunities that we can work to fulfill. So that brings us, that's what I've got for the resources. Are there questions?
Back down so that the amount.
Yeah.
Can you talk total amount
Yeah,
budget?
total amount that we're looking at right now is about $737,000. It may vary slightly, and I know with our PE department, we were still finalizing some of the durable items because they needed to look at the equipment they have in the curriculum. So that's what we're looking at. And that covers the 7 different content
That's a lot.
areas, K-12.
I just had a quick question. You mentioned that for sociology and psychology, I believe it is, you have the hardbound books and those have lasted several years. Obviously, that's where the greatest value is. Do we have an option of getting more hard copies for other subjects, or it's just those are more archaic?
We do, and so how it typically works, especially at the high school level, is we'll get a class set of hard copy books. That's what the teachers like to have, is a class set there. Sometimes they don't want the students on the laptop, so they'll get out the books. And then we have probably 5 or 10 in the library that if a student needs to check out a hard copy, they can. Yeah, we still provide them all digital access. Other companies, like when we adopted math last year for Carnegie, their book is one of those consumable books.
I see.
So they don't have the hardback option for us.
And I could see with like math, you
Yeah.
could work it out and have the problems. It's nice to be able to have a pamphlet to work with one. Same with like Spanish, but there might be, I don't know if there's any other flexibility on any of the other subjects for hard copies.
It's really one or the other. Either they're gonna tell us they have a hard copy version that we stay with, or that it's more of a consumable, single time use.
and there's probably less students, wouldn't there be, using psychology and sociology versus math and,
Yeah.
Right.
But like, all of the social studies ones, for example, at the secondary level, those are all hardback books. Even
They're like
those,
this
after
big.
6 years of use, have some wear and tear.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I was just curious about what flexibility on those you have.
When we're looking at the $737,000, this is over 6 years. And so in theory, Spanish isn't coming back again next year and asking for another $50,000. This is.
That's for the 6 years. So when you divide it out per student per year, this varies a little bit more because it's so many different content areas, but on a whole, we're looking at between $30 to $35 per student per year for a core subject. Some of our other subjects may not be as expensive, but when you look at really the cost per year, That's what I have to remind myself of because this is a large dollar amount.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way around it.
And then teacher resources basically are year to year, depending upon their needs or if they're gonna teach something.
What do you mean by teacher resources?
Well, you have teacher
Oh.
resource requests.
That one, those are books for the American Sign Language
Right.
class that are teacher facing. So he uses those to write his lesson plans.
Oh, okay.
So they might be books about a deaf piece, those different pieces. So he draws from those.
So all the books he has listed down underneath for teacher resources?
They're on the second page, it's at the very bottom.
Yeah.
Cindy, the American Sign Language teacher resources, yeah,
Yeah, so all those books that he's asking for just help him
just a
with
single copy.
of each, okay.
And it's the same thing with the art teachers and their classroom resources, their resource books. Those are all single editions as they work to build their libraries for students to be able to reference.
Okay.
Well, we appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
I've sat in one of your meetings and you do a wonderful job.
Thank you.
She does.
It's fun, I love it.
I've sat in several of her meetings.
Thank
And she really, you do, Paige, do a phenomenal job in terms of getting it set up and all the materials for everyone to look at.
Thank you.
And you
It takes
set-
a team. There's a team of people that help me get all of it.
You all do a great job.
Yes.
And
Thank
people
you.
can access that, right, on the website if they have questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so let's move on to discussion item E. We almost have the alphabet on there.
I know, right? That's a lot of things tonight. Nope, as you're aware, in January, Mrs. Wold Middle School announced her intention to retire at the end of this school year. As a result, we set up a process whereby we would make a selection for a new principal to follow Mrs. Wold as she leaves. So we did several things. I just wanted to remind the board and public kind of the process we went through. We sent surveys out to staff, parents, and students requesting feedback on what they were looking for in a new principal. We posted the job in early February and let that job posting stayed open until about 21st. During that time while it was open, we selected a number of teachers from the middle school, teachers and other staff, secretaries and so on, to be a part of that hiring committee. We also found 2 parents that had students that were going through that were willing to be a part of that committee. That committee we had 15 applications. 2 just didn't have some of the required qualifications we needed, so they weren't considered. But then the 13 that were remaining, the committee reviewed those and selected 7 of those candidates to interview. We interviewed those first on March 4th. Myself and the committee had those interviews. Following that interview on the 4th, the committee narrowed that field to 3 finalists. The 3 finalists were Mark Kingson, Stephanie Mipps, and those are both assistants at our middle school currently. And then our 3rd was an applicant from Colorado whose name was Eric. Thank you. Eric McCaslin Hahn was his name. And all were phenomenal candidates, had wonderful qualities, and honestly, we felt very lucky in our quality of candidates. We had 3 that any one of those 3 really had qualities to be a good principal. So in that, as we narrowed that field, we sat down and Mrs. Pennington and I conducted a 2nd round of interviews. And out of that round of interviews, after some discussion, I am making a recommendation to you as a board that Mark Kingson would be the new principal for the middle school. Mark is here tonight. If you want to stand up, Mark. Just so that everybody that doesn't know you can see you. His wife, Kara, is here with him tonight, so I'm grateful. We won't make Kara stand up. But we
Do a speech? I'm joking.
But we are excited about the vision that Mark shared that he has for the middle school of where we feel like he can take it. There's a lot of good qualities that he had. Not to say that the other candidates that weren't selected didn't have good qualities as well, but in looking at where we felt like the candidates could take the school in terms of direction that we're trying to go with our middle school education and receiving those students from the elementary and moving them through to the high school. We felt that Mark was the best candidate for that. And so that is my recommendation to you as a board. And if you have any questions for me about the process or the selection.
I'm just curious as to, is it not appropriate to have a board member be on the selection committee?
Oftentimes it's not appropriate. It can be appropriate depending on how the board selects, but
It's hard
oftentimes.
because we're the end result, and if we're on the front process, then we're just kind of doing the whole process, I think.
Sometimes our attorneys will suggest is that if a board member sits on the hiring committee, then they have to recuse them. That particular board member would have to recuse themselves from the decision when making the hiring decision because they were already a part of the recommending. But that's something that certainly if you as a board would like to move forward with that in the future, it doesn't hurt to explore that. I've been in districts where that has been part of the process, and I've been in districts where it's not. So it really becomes a district preference.
Well, then, Mark, I'll like to meet with you sometime like I did Johnny. Okay, great. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yes, congratulations.
And there will be an action item because that was not part of the consent. So we'll need to take an action item later in the meeting. Any other further?
Well, I was just asked by parents that, the school board be very involved with that, but I said, there is a process and I think it works very good. It's hard for the school board to be involved in all aspects of a selection process.
Right.
But
I don't think we'd be governing it.
I have
Yeah.
good faith in
Would not be
how it's
governance.
worked out here. And I do agree picking somebody locally as opposed to the person from Denver, that made it very hard, somebody that's not from the area to be adjusted and to be able to hit the ground running.
Right.
So I think it's worked pretty well.
Right. And also, as you remember, one of the things we try to do is just keep you appraised throughout the process. So as we're making those selections, so that if there's a concern, it can be, you individually can let me know so that we can address those kind of things as we go through.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to the fun calendar discussion.
All right. So, and I apologize for this not being on the, on Assembly earlier. We were finalizing a few things and some of this is dealing with, as a result of legislation. And so we're trying to, make changes as they're making.
So what you're saying is the final version is not the final version.
The final version is not the final version. So
So this,
we're going to get it put up here on the screen just so that those that are in the audience can see what we're talking about. But you have a hard copy at your desk,
but which is a draft.
which is a draft, sort of. This is going to be a weird year for the calendar. I'll just tell you. And not that the final result will be weird,
Draft that's
But-
alive.
the process that we go through, because typically, and I'm going to say what I said to the staff the other day, I was really proud of myself because we started the process in November to try and get actually 2 years of a calendar laid out. And so that we would actually be having these conversations in January and February. But after we did meet in November as a calendar committee, And then in December, we started hearing rumblings of some possible legislation that was going to affect our calendars coming through. And we didn't have any details of it, but I was hesitant to put a lot of effort and work into a calendar if legislative issues were going to waylay that. And we're going to talk about the bill that is doing this later in the meeting, House Bill 521. It's actually a facilities bill, and we'll go through a lot of the details on that bill later in the meeting today. But one of the things in that, the points in that is that there's a lot of money that's being made available for schools to work on facilities. So things that are for instance, like some of the things that Mr. Hollinger talked about in terms of upkeep, maintenance, we have those needs at all of our schools. Our elementary schools all have upkeep. Our middle school has upkeep needs that we need to be able to do. And some of them are higher ticket items that it's hard to do without some kind of a plant facility levy or a bond. And we've tried to add some of those things to bonds in the past, but those have failed. So there's this opportunity with this facilities bill with a lot of money attached. But one of the key principles, or not the key principles, but one aspect of the bill is that if a school district is on a 5-day week calendar, they cannot move to a 4-day week calendar and receive those funds. Now, we are on a 4-day week already, so that piece doesn't apply. But the next piece that comes into that is that if a school district is on a 4-day week calendar, then they are required to meet some standards for minimum number of days. The problem is that there is no minimum number of days established by the state board, by the state law, or anything like that. They have minimum numbers of hours, which we meet. As the Middleton School District moved to a 4-day week, we're not just hitting the minimum of 990 hours. We're up in the thousands of hours that we have for our students in there, and so when we moved to the 4-day, we extended the number of hours in every given day. And so we were still meeting all of the instructional time that our students needed. The requirement then is that we meet the minimum number of days, but the state board has to set that. The state board can't set that until at earliest mid-May. The state board has a regular meeting in April that they're going to present the materials for this, and then they would have to finalize that and vote on it they'd actually have to have an emergency meeting in May, which they have indicated that they're planning to do. That being said, we really can't set a calendar if we don't know what that minimum number of days is going to be. And that minimum number of days could be, right now we have 144 student days. The average number of student days for a 4-day week is 145 right now in the state of Idaho. If all they did was make that the minimum, well, that would be a pretty easy thing to do, and we could keep a calendar similar to what we've done in the past. If they came back and said, and I'm saying all of this is, we don't know how the state board is going to rule on this, but if they came back and said it was 160 days, well, all of a sudden we'd have to add 16 days into the calendar, and that does become a pretty significant challenge and process to go through. So the 4-day week, the fact that we're on that 4-day week and there's this opportunity for large amounts of dollars for facilities, and that could even help us in terms of building a new elementary, and we'll talk about those details. It causes some problems with creating a calendar. But then we also know that there's a lot of people that are trying to set vacations. They're trying to set how, some of them are setting, moving days and things like that. And they're asking us for, when does the school year start? When are your vacations? When are those kind of things? So what we felt as a committee was that we would come to the board and recommend some very minimal expectations for the calendar, which would be the first day of school for teachers, the first day of school for students, the minimum days for Christmas, which would mean it could be more than that, but we would not do less. And that, I mean, that when you look at this calendar, it's pretty easy to see why it would be that way. And then spring break, those being the primary days that probably would not change, regardless of what kind of a calendar we were looking at. And with the first day of school, just knowing when people have to be back from the summer. So after we talked, we did send out a quick survey just to our staff, just to get an idea from them in terms of instructional considerations, as well as preparation for their classrooms and things like that. What we came up with was a recommendation to look at, and let me actually take a step back. If we did this next year's calendar for 24-25 as almost like a copy of this year's calendar, we would be starting on August 5th, would be the day that you would start. And then you would work through and you'd have everything and you'd be done before Memorial Day, with holidays being very similar to what, you obviously have to make adjustments. In looking at what we were faced with, we felt that starting the teachers on the 7th and then starting students on the 13th, what that would do is it would allow most of the back to school activities to take place on the 12th. And then the teachers would have those 2 days in the week prior to prepare their classrooms. Now, what we also might do, once we have all of those parameters, is add 2, because traditionally we have 4 days of teacher preparation before the first day of school. So maybe we can, depending on what the parameters come out as, maybe it's something that we would do, and I'm just throwing a maybe out there, maybe we would take the August 6th or August 9th and put in that one of those days as a professional development day. That wouldn't affect when students came back, but it would provide some additional time for teachers. Maybe something that we could look at, if, let's say, the parameters came back and we were trying to keep with a 4-day week and get out before Memorial Day, but they didn't really extend the days, maybe what we do is we move that start day for teachers to start on the 5th. Again, that would have, for most of our teachers, the survey indicated that, if it was a choice of coming back on the 5th or a 4-day week, they would come back on a 5th to keep on that 4-day week. That would just give us a little bit of flexibility, but then we can publish that that teacher day would be the 7th and the student day would be the 13th, and we would just commit to holding those things and these other dates that are listed. Again, this isn't ideal by any means, but it was a way for us to at least get some of those key dates set. And then when we get the parameters, we'll fill in around those dates to meet whatever. And when we do that, we already have plans for putting surveys out to our families, our parents, our students, and our teachers. That's something that we'll share with you as a board. Here are the things that we're looking at, so that everybody can give that input prior to us actually establishing that calendar. We believe we'll be able to get that information by the 17th or 18th of April.
Good.
And then we would be able to work for a month until they had their next meeting in May. We could work for a month getting it all put together so that when they approve it, their parameters in May, we can then the next day, the next week, put something out to our parents that would be approved.
Have you heard, as far as the legislative action in May or the meeting, is that a pushback because of other school districts proposing, like Nampa going to a 4-day school?
I could not, I don't know that I could really say for sure why it's moving. I mean, I have I have my guesses, but I don't know that it would be
No,
appropriate for me to
no.
share my guess here.
No,
But it's just one of those things, you'll see when we go through Bill 521, there's a whole bunch of little pieces to it. And it's just one of those little pieces that either a legislator or lawmaker felt, this is something that I want to put in here, and I'm not gonna support everything else if I don't get this part in. And, and that's one of the ways that politics happens within any political organizations, whether, I'm not saying I like that, but it's certainly the way that it often happens. And so somewhere in the making of that bill, someone felt like that was an important enough topic to throw in there, and then others have gone. The bill right now has passed the House committee, House floor vote. It's passed the Senate committee and is sitting in ready for a Senate vote. But there's been no date established, at least as far as I had seen the last time I checked. If it were to pass committee, it's almost certain that, if it were to pass the Senate, it's almost certain the governor would approve. And then the state board would be on task to get those criteria to us. Any questions, concerns, thoughts?
Just hope they don't take away our 4 days.
Right.
I'm just curious, you kept saying minimum.
Yes.
Is there a maximum?
Oh,
Or
yeah.
You can go more than the minimum?
Oh, yes, of course. You can, and it's similar to the minimum hours. For instance, right now, the state bases it on hours, and you have to have at minimum 990 hours for a high school student that they're in class. Now, we do more than that. We do, I think, if I remember right, 1,020, 1,030 hours, somewhere in there. So we're not bound by that minimum. It just sets the parameters so that we know we don't have to, we can go whichever direction we feel. If as a board, you felt like it was important to add additional hours beyond whatever that minimum is, we'll just have to see what the board comes up with. Because one of the things they might have to do, and we'll see how they handle it, they might have to define what a day is. How many hours is in a day? Right now, for attendance purposes and only attendance purposes, they consider, and this is not what students get to do, just so everybody knows. 4 hours is a full day, as far as the state is concerned. Now, we can set attendance expectations for our students, but you go 4 hours, you get a full day at the state level. If they don't change something, then we are still stuck. I say stuck. We are still fixed with that same definition of a day.
Okay. I'm gonna,
you're okay.
knowing what Mr. Hollinger did, said about your student achievement and everything. I just hope that we look at making sure our students are achieving.
Right.
We hope so.
And that they have enough time to do it, because I feel like, and I may get booed, but I feel like a 4-day week is forcing teachers to get a lot of curriculum in that they could maybe, and I'll be honest, I'm almost positive there's some that doesn't get put in
Mm-hmm.
because they don't have that extra Friday day for students. And some students are good with 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
Other students may need a little extra time. And I hope as a district, we can work on that, whether it's through summer school,
Mm-hmm.
or an opportunity for them to be able to get that curriculum in. Because I just think sometimes it gets kind of cut in half or cut in 3/4, of the chapter or what, however they do it.
Well, and I think that that's an excellent thing that we need to be watching ourselves
Mhm.
for throughout the process. And like I said, when we start looking at minimum days, we're not bound by the minimum. It just again tells us where our boundaries are. Just in the same way we weren't bound by the minimum in hours when we were establishing that from
Yeah.
moving from a 5-day to a 4-day.
Well, do the, and I should know this, but as far as the professional learning communities, the
Mhm.
PLCs within the buildings,
Yes.
are they looking at that? I'm looking at you, Mr. Hollinger. You know, in terms of guiding the teachers so that they're able to, or at least talking to them about, are they able to get their curriculum finished in 4 days?
Yeah, we discussed it and I'm okay with that.
Well,
Yes.
Yeah, it's
No,
definitely a
you're totally
discussion that
good.
we have. I know it was an adjustment moving to it. At this point, teachers feel comfortable that they get through the curriculum, but it was definitely an adjustment to do it. And yeah, so now we feel fine. You mentioned the professional learning communities. That's one place that we feel like we may lack a little bit, is just finding that time to meet together. We do meet on Fridays when the teachers come together, but we have to find other times that it's not built in quite as smoothly, but
Like the Wednesdays we used to have where they
Yes.
just collaborate.
Yeah, the collaboration, is that gone away totally?
it doesn't go away totally, but the way we do it is they have the collaboration time built into the calendar, but it's not set on a certain day or a certain time. So essentially, we're allocating the hours for the teachers to be able to meet so that they're being compensated for the time that they put in. But then it's on each individual PLC or school to identify the best time, because where you are on a 4-day week, it extends that time during for the day. So for some teachers, maybe that PLC is better to meet at, 7 in the morning, and they'll all get there early to meet for their PLC. For others, maybe it's the after school hours, but their responsibility is to find the time themselves, and the principal's responsibility is to monitor to make sure that those are actually happening.
Okay, so define teacher, I know I know what professional development is,
Mhm.
and I'm fairly sure I know what teacher workday is.
Yeah.
But in our district, what do the teachers define teacher workday as?
I would say, and I'm going to let Lisa speak to it a little bit as well, but I would say when you talk about a teacher workday, it's time that they're given to do a number of different things. Some of it is preparation for coursework, that's beyond the regular daily preparation. It might be adjusting curriculum within their classroom, and they just need extra time to be able to do that. And so we try to build that in different increments throughout the year. Another way that they might use that time is like at the end of a semester. Sometimes there's large projects that all the students are turning in at the end of the semester. And so utilizing some of that time to be able to put some quality grading into that. What would be some other that you've
Like
seen?
meetings, so a lot of times our elementary teams plan together, and so they might utilize that time to plan together. They have different MTSS teams or RTI teams. Sometimes they utilize that teacher work time to meet in their smaller groups or look at student data as well.
And sometimes there's specific trainings that happen during those work times because they only apply to specific smaller groups. For instance, if there were, let's say maybe our school psychologists needed time to meet together, we might prepare that on a teacher work day because it just is a time that they have that's available.
Does that apply to them as
Yes.
well as the SLPs and the
Yes.
other? Okay.
What we really try to do is stay away from structured meeting times, so like staff meetings or district meetings, and make sure that we allow them flexibility in that time to meet needs that they have, that teachers specifically have.
But none of those on our regular calendar, we actually have another category outside of the teacher professional development and teacher work time that is specifically collaboration time. And that's those times. No, it's not on here
I
because
know,
we
but
haven't
I
filled it
don't
out.
think it was on
It was-
last year's.
It was on the last, it's the last, it would be
Very
this
bottom.
last column right there. And it's-
I just feel like, and I'm getting kind of the wind from different, from parents and teachers, that there's just not enough time
Mhm.
to collaborate. Now, I know there are some that could care less whether they collaborate because they've got their own way, but I just think we need to think about that when we're looking at this year's calendar.
Absolutely.
I'll stop now.
Any other, thank you.
Thank you.
So.
I feel like I just got smacked on the knuckles by a teacher.
Come over here.
So this would be something that I would be requesting that the board approve these dates only. And then what I would do is I would prepare a notice that we would put out to parents so they understand, here are dates that you can plan these things around, but the full calendar will be available in mid-May.
Can you send
And
that in an email?
we would send that in an email to all of our parents.
Okay.
When you say the 145 school days, that's a minimum.
Oh, no,
No, we
that's
go
just the
hours.
average right
That's
now.
the, what happened to the 180?
That if you're on a 5-day week, that is the
That's
average.
what it
Yep.
is. So we've squeezed that extra into
Well,
4
and some of
days.
that shifted between COVID and back when, budget cuts were happening to 170.
Oh, meaning the average?
Yeah,
So the average within the state would be actually less for a 5-day week.
Okay.
But that was converted to hours, which is
Correct.
how we made that shift by making a longer day.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you for your insights. For those that don't know, Cindy was a teacher in her life, so she,
They figured
we
it out.
appreciate
She's
her-
using the
her
acronyms.
depth
Sorry.
of knowledge in that department is very helpful for us.
Thank you. Let's move on to action item G.
Okay, this is another one that I apologize for not getting things to you sooner, but we've just been waiting for bids to come in and we did get some bids. And I'll explain to secure our future. You won't have any materials on this one right here, so. I'm just making sure I open up the right email here. So the Secure Our Futures grant comes in 2 phases. The first phase, all of the school districts in the state of Idaho received a certain amount of funding that was allocated for their district. All they had to do was file an application and meet the criteria and they would receive those dollars. We did that earlier it was back in the summer when we looked at the funding for the PA system at the middle school. So we utilized the first phase of fundings for the middle school PA system. And that was the one that was kind of getting us in line since we've moved 2 of our elementaries and our academy already into that system, the audio enhancement system. The second phase is a phase that is more competitive. You can only submit 1 proposal for the school, because I should actually back up. On phase 1, we also included some security cameras at each of our schools in addition to that. So there were multiple things, and you were allowed to do that with the first phase. The second phase has to be a more narrow focus. And so what we went through our emergency operations team. We talked with our principals, looking at what some of those things would be. And while it doesn't necessarily go to the limit, because there are a number of school districts that will be applying for a much smaller pot of money for this phase 2. It doesn't go to the full limit, but what we're looking at is a number of different fencing additions to our school district that would help schools address the outer borders, like when students are out on the playground. So as an example, we would look at Mill Creek Elementary. Their whole outer perimeter is fenced, but they have gates they're openings that don't actually have gates on them. So we would be looking at putting actual gates on those areas. At the middle school, there's an extensive number of spaces that are not completely fenced in. And we started, if you notice on the east side of the school, we started putting some of those in. But all of these things, it's not as much about it's helping have the students be in a place where they can't easily run without us being aware, but also of others trying to get in. If we're funneling people in the easy way to get into a location is through an area that's monitored. That's really what the fencing is designed to do. And so there's many, many feet of fencing at the middle school that we'd be looking at. In addition, we'd be looking at Heights Elementary of putting where they've added the new sidewalk in, of adjusting all the fencing there to line the sidewalk and be able to totally enclose our facility on that side of the school. And so what we'd be looking at between all of our just one second, I just want to make sure I'm giving you the right number. Because I have 3 different bids here. And they just came in today, I apologize. We would be looking at a total of $45,000 for the fencing materials that we would be requesting in this Secure Our Futures Phase 2.
So you said more narrow focus. What are they telling you?
Meaning, well, the more narrow focus means it can only be one thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
So we could not ask them for some fencing and some cameras and some, and another, what do you call it? PA system, thank you. We couldn't do that, so we felt like by narrowing it and having a little bit smaller, we'd have a better shot at actually getting those funds.
Okay.
So essentially what you would be doing as a board is approving our putting in this grant for the $45,000 for the fencing for the Mill Creek, Heights, and middle school.
Sounds good.
Any questions?
Mm-mm.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just thinking we might take a recess and let kids go.
If that's what you would like to do.
Ben's-
High school students have been so good, and I know you want to stay till we get to M, not really. Come up and get your agenda signed. We're gonna take a little recess here. Now I'm blue. Okay, thank you everyone for that.
Oh, hold on.
It might feel a little cooler in here now. There's not so many bodies.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Ooh.
You need that still.
No,
Okay.
that's all right. I'll try to get mine working.
You just tell me when, Gina.
We're ready.
All right. Well, let's move on to discussion item H.
So this is more just, give me any direction you'd like to give me as we start working towards, new approach to our education foundation. As you're aware, an education foundation is the kind of the charitable arm of a school, but it's more about the receiving of the charitable donations for a school district. The larger a school district gets, the more likely they are to have a very established foundation. And what it does, in a lot of ways, a strong foundation allows for donors that have more substantial types of donations that they would like to donate to a school district to do so because they feel like there is a stronger infrastructure behind it. Oftentimes you'll see donors that will want to come in and they'll want to donate sometimes, and I'm not even going to mention amounts, but smaller sums that they don't have a problem just handing to a school and saying, hey, go and buy some new computers, go and buy some, scoreboards, lights, whatever. But when you start looking at some of these other types of donations, sometimes those donors are looking for a very well-established process because they're getting ready to donate a large sum. And sometimes it's just for tax purposes, but sometimes it's about their legacy. They want a legacy to share with, whether it's the school that they've been a part of, a community that they've been a part of. And as a whole, foundations are typically, outside of a school district. They have their own board, they have their own organization around it. But what I've found in the districts that I've been a part of is when you've got a smaller district that's growing into a larger district, sometimes it's hard to get that foundation off the ground. And so what I'm going to be proposing we'll bring kind of a more formal proposal as we get organized around this, is that we as a school district assist the foundation to establish a stronger infrastructure so that they're in a better position to be able to both encourage donations, but also just to accept donations from those that are looking to help develop the school. The way that you'll see some districts set up, and this is where we have some opportunity as a board to give some suggestions to the Education Foundation, because one of the things we have to be cautious of is never getting in a position where this board is trying to direct the board of the foundation. But we have seen I have seen organizations where you have one member from the school board acting as a member of the Education Foundation Board, so that there's not a way that one person could overwhelm a vote, but that there's still a connection there. And that just depends on the bylaws of the foundation and the community members that make that up. So in the past, I've been a part of districts where we have essentially kind of jump-started with sometimes it's with funding, sometimes it's just with support from the district office to get that kind of motion going. Because eventually, once you get a foundation that's operating in a strong way, it can take care of the financial pieces itself. But oftentimes to get it started, it needs a little bit of help from the school district that it's trying to support. But again, that's just kind of the give and take there. So my recommendation would be that we start moving forward with this. Our current foundation is very small. There are only 2 active members of the board of the foundation, and there's really no activity happening. We do have PTOs, PTAs within the district. We have boosters within the district. But what would be ideal would be to create a foundation that then acts as the umbrella for all of those, not taking control of a PTO or PTA, but having that, each group having a voice within that foundation. So, because once you do that, you start building a strong, both a strong financial and a strong personnel infrastructure around that project. And oftentimes you start seeing organization come around in the development of an alumni organization that comes and is part of that foundation.
Yeah, you could, so Caldwell has one.
Yes, Caldwell is a good example.
Pennington and I are familiar with it because we both have family members have scholarships that
Right.
are in that. And it's actually really a very cool thing.
Caldwell has a very strong foundation. Both West Ada and Boise have strong foundations that are really almost their own entity, a strong financial viable entity. In Preston, we had a smaller, it wasn't to the degree, but it was taking on the same things. It was taking on scholarships. It was it was running fundraisers for the district, and all fundraising for the district was running through them. And it ran through them so that those that were donating could take advantage of the tax advantages of donating to an educational foundation. And then it was a place for all of those funds to be managed by a group. So unless you as a board would have some concerns with that direction, that's a direction I would like to go. And also, if you have any suggestions, thoughts that you'd like me to consider as we start putting that together, I'd just want to lay that out with you.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like our foundation needs some structure. There's not really anything going on. It's just kind of an empty little thing. So needs a little pushing, little support from us in any way we can do that. But
What does that assistance look like?
Yeah.
Well, so like I said, let me give you an example. In Preston, we allocated $10,000 to $15,000 a year that we essentially initially in those first years gave to the foundation so that they had, but they actually hired an executive director that just worked part-time on an hourly basis. They used those funds to help start with some of the supplies for some of the fundraisers that they were trying to do. I mean, as an example, they did a fundraiser where you were bailing people out of jail they had a big fair that was going on for a week. Well, they needed to build a jail cell. And so they used some of those funds to build the jail cell that was going to house, jail cell, quote unquote, that it was going to house the school employees that were trying to get bailed out. And so then people would come and donate certain amounts of dollars to bail that person out. That was an example of where some of the funds were used. The executive director was directing some of that project. And we were getting to the point as I was leaving Preston where the amount of money coming in was more than supportive of that 10, 15,000, where the district would be able to step away from that because they were already bringing in enough to run what they needed to run.
Have you talked to the two members that are still?
Yes.
And they're
open to the idea. I didn't want to go too far into meeting if that was something that as a board there were concerns with.
they just need a little money.
They're honestly ready to let the district come and help them reorganize.
Okay.
And all we're gonna do is give them some assistance in reorganizing initially. And then once they've got a new board, then we want to be working with them to let them be the driving force. And then they would come and make a request from us as a district, rather than us saying, here, board, go and do this.
So going to the FFA banquet, I found out that there is an FFA alumni board, or not board, anyway, support
Yeah.
for the
Right.
FFA. So then you've got the booster club and the sports
Yep.
oriented things. And so would they like get everybody together and just kind of
Ideally, I would say yes, but that's not something, because all of these organizations that are organized outside of the district, it's not for us to tell them they have to. What we want to do is invite them to come and be a part of that, because the more of the organizations within the district that are underneath that foundation, the stronger the foundation is as a whole. And oftentimes you can leverage pieces, the strength of one group to help another. Not that you're taking funds from one to help another, but the strength behind it. A lot of this is based on impressions that people might have of where their money is going to go. And if they feel like it's organized and there are a lot of groups that are part of it, and they're seeing the Education Foundation being active within the community, they feel more comfortable coming and participating either through their time or through any kind of donation that they might look at.
I think it's a great idea. I'm just curious of like marketing or, you know, how you get the word out so people would know.
Yeah, and it starts small, but honestly, one of the best things that I've seen is getting even a part-time executive director that it's their role to build.
Mhm.
You know, they don't have to put a lot of hours in that initially, but it's their role to be building that foundation. And then again, eventually, if you're doing it right, then the foundation starts taking care of itself.
So if we send a message to these two active people that say, please come to us and tell us, you know, that you want some seed money, you want us to help you get going.
Well, and I would actively participate with them while they get their board together and start establishing their bylaws. And then that group would then come and make a request.
Yeah, that's right. That sounds good.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to discussion item I, our contract with LKV Architects.
Yes.
Mrs. Van Ocker.
And if I could.
To our podium.
She was looking at her watch like, man, why can you let me go to the teenagers?
Sorry you weren't a high school student.
Wonderful, I love it.
Well, Amber's getting ready. If I could just give a kind of a overview of what we're trying to accomplish here today.
Yep.
We've got Amber here from LKV, and we've got Nathan Nethers from ESI that are both here. And one of the things we've been doing in the last month since the last board meeting is working on some of the details of contracts and how we'll be working together within the three organizations. And each of you have a summary letter from LKV and a summary letter from ESI that kind of goes over those key points that would be then worked out with in the contract that you see that is here. And those are the big documents that you've got copies of. But what Amber and Nathan will do, each for their own organization, is help walk you through what some of those key points are and how we plan to be working together and their proposal. And then over the next month, we'll fill in the details. We'll get it in front of our attorneys, and you'll also have time to review that yourselves as a board. So that ideally, we'd be looking to approve those contracts in our April board meeting. Is that similar to what we decided?
Yeah, great, Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you for letting us come this evening, and thank you for selecting us. We're very excited to start this process and this journey that you all are gonna go on, and we're gonna be right there with you. So what I've tried to do, I don't know how much time you guys have had to kind of review some of these documents. I always like to attach kind of this outline letter, because the AIA document that ultimately will be the contract that we all sign is just, it's got a lot of legalese in it, and your counsel will review all of that. So the summary letter is just kind of meant to kind of distill things down a little bit. And because we've been brought on early and we're going to be here for what I like to call pre-bond services, that's the phase one piece where, you know, from this point up until that bond election, we're going to be working for you in earnest on either designing the elementary school, taking it to a certain level that everyone feels comfortable with at your direction. And a lot of that, so when you look at that outline, and I'm not gonna read through all of this, but I really do try to put some very specific processes to that phase one pre-bond planning effort, so that you have an expectation of what it is that we're doing for you from this point on. And then it's after that phase one piece is done, and after the conclusion of a successful bond election, of course, we would move then into what we consider a phase two services, which really does encompass all of the work that we do to get you through the entitlement process, which is certainly a big part of this, where all the approvals from all the jurisdictions. We're developing all the construction documents that we would then hand off to ESI to go through a public bidding process. So it really is that phase two is soup to nuts. We're covering everything for you. And it includes all of our consulting team members are a part of that. You'll see that I'm not attaching a fee to that phase two yet, because we're just getting started. So between now and, perhaps your April board meeting, when you would be voting and approving this final contract language, we'll actually be able to fill in some of those pieces as far as what that phase two structure would be as far as our fee is concerned. So you'll see that is specifically left out, and that's because we're just getting started, and it's difficult for us to estimate that number right now until we kind of get our entire team on board. So hopefully here in the next month, we'll be able to identify what that percentage-based fee is for the phase two. I have attached a recommended fee for the phase one, which is just a flat fee for our efforts up front and those identified elements that we're gonna complete for you during that phase one pre-bond services. Any questions? I didn't want to jump totally into that draft AIA document. That is still a draft. There's lots of language in there that you guys can review, and your council will definitely review that and probably come back with some recommendations, which is pretty standard for us to see.
Amber, could you take us through, in some of our meetings, we've talked a little bit about that fixed fee in the phase one and because that's really where we're heading in initially before, and this is work done before a bond has even been approved by the voters. And so could you walk through what some of those things are and why there would be that, what that cost would be?
Sure, and that fixed fee number, from our experience and what we've been doing with other districts from a pre-bond services, that's how I've kind of come up with those numbers. It's just the one takeaway I want to make sure that you as a board understands is that you've hired us for professional services, but we're also very committed to the goal of getting a bond election successfully passed for you. And so, we're also, I like to say we're putting skin in the game to it also. We're here to do whatever it is that you want us to do from day one up to that bond election point. So you can see on that, it outlines just 1 through 10, some of the items that we're going to be doing. Obviously conducting these initial kickoff meetings with the administrative team and ESI. Right now, you've got 2 potential site options that have been discussed. We'll look at both of those if the second site does come into play. And we like to analyze those and kind of give you some pros and cons on the development of the site. We would certainly help you identify a facility bond advisory committee, which is an important piece for that pre-bond services. Help you organize focus groups and workshop meetings. That's where we really kind of start talking with the community, start talking with your faculty members, and really identifying project goals. We do that high-level educational programming and space planning. So that's where we'll decide you know, how many students are we trying to educate in this facility? What's the number of classrooms? Are there unique curriculum pieces we need to be focusing on? And we'll start with that high-level programming and space planning and start trying to put some ideas behind this design. Obviously, we jump right into a preliminary facility and site design work. Again, it's a little high level. And the next piece is where we really work with Nathan and his team. They'll start looking at that preliminary design effort. That's where we'll start really determining what that bond scope is and the amount of dollars that we're gonna need to successfully build that project. We of course help in the development of all the informational materials and graphics that would be helping you in your bond efforts. And I love the discussion that you guys just had about having community involvement and pretend, you know, a foundation, because we would work directly hand in hand with those folks to help with a successful bond package. We always participate in public outreach and informational meetings, and, you know, you'll see me present at all of those meetings where we really do help kind of answer questions that the community may have. And then obviously throughout this whole process, we'll have multiple presentations back to you for direction and approval.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you for waiting almost all over an hour and a half.
That's awesome.
And
I love all the students here. That was great. They're being so good.
They
I can see
were-
these phones out. I
they
don't
were
know.
very
That's
good. That was a good
Very
group tonight.
It's great.
I thought you probably found it interesting that the only member of the public that chose to speak tonight was addressing the proposed elementary.
Yeah.
Her concern was that it wouldn't even be enough to cover the lots that the houses they haven't even built yet. I just thought you probably had an opinion or some reaction to her comments on that.
Well, you know, there are calculations that we can do with a development like that, where we really could probably put some pretty solid numbers to what that development is gonna do to you from an enrollment perspective.
Right.
You know, there's Compass, I don't know, it's a planning organization that is in the Treasure Valley. They're very good at helping us identify, you know, from a development perspective, if you're dealing with apartments or single family or a multifamily type development, you know, what is a good average number that you guys can utilize to understand how enrollment is gonna be affected across the district. So I think we could put some actual science to that,
Well,
which
and
might be helpful.
Mark's quoted some numbers because we've been on that building committee about an average child per household.
Yeah, 0.569 is the rate that Davis Demographics gave us about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
And that would be a good starting point, but we're in obviously a rapidly growing community, and that's what we've told people for years. By the time we actually get an elementary school built, we're gonna need another one. That's the problem we have.
It's, yeah, and your position is not unlike most of the districts throughout the Treasure Valley.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to live in Idaho.
Yes,
Yeah,
we do.
for sure. Thank you.
Any questions?
Okay, so what we would be looking at is if there's a question that comes up, please shoot it my way. We'll be working directly with Amber over these next several weeks, filling in as much detail as we can. And if we're ready to do that in April, we'll bring everything that we've got to you in April, and then we'll
Perfect.
decide from there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amber.
All right. Nathan, Mr. Nethers, come on up. Thank you for waiting.
Of course. Good to be here. Good to see you all again. Amber stole my thunder and said it way more articulately. Let's see if you have. So very similar to how Amber had laid hers out, kind of have our scope of services letter here laid out. Really, I mean, we kind of looked at it in two big chunks: pre-construction and construction. Really just kind of starting down there from the bottom. Really, we would be working with LKV and Mark and the rest of the board and all you folks in the community, kind of hand in hand working with them, kind of really functioning as the leader here for the team, making sure we're staying on track and checking all the boxes and doing everything we need to do. We'd be functioning as facilitators for our weekly, typically it's a weekly meeting, but meeting here with all the team to make sure that we're keeping on track and addressing everything that needs to be done, working hand in hand with LKV on site feasibility analysis from the builder's standpoint, right? Looking at it from site access and logistics and where utilities and really helping provide input both from a constructability and a logistics and a schedule standpoint, as well as a cost standpoint to help evaluate potential sites for you folks. As Amber said, right, attending community and school board meetings, we'd absolutely be there. It'd be myself and probably a few other members of our team, depending on what needed to be addressed, but we'll be there along the way for everything. Helping along with the permit process, whether that's providing input on how maybe we should be different impacts if we submit permits in different packages, what that looks like from a scheduling standpoint, what that looks from a procurement or financial standpoint. We'd be providing an input to the team to figure out what the best plan is for the permit submission strategy. Project schedule, right? That's kind of what we do at our core is planners and schedulers. So we met already and started roughing out a schedule, and we'll be really building that and keeping us on track and utilizing it as a tool from now till ribbon cutting, right? And that starts with all the pre-construction activities, whether it's design, permitting, different board meetings, community meetings, all that will be encompassed in this schedule and utilized as a tool from day one. Constructability. So again, putting on our builder hat, looking at potential plans and options to build the new school, right? And understanding what what those things have impact with maybe their schedule or budget, and providing our input analysis as builders and providing perhaps other options or other avenues, or just making sure that you folks are armed with the right information, the entire team is armed with that information to make informed and educated decisions as to, do we want the school to be built out of this product or out of this product? We want it to be oriented one way or another so that everyone can make the best informed decision to utilize the budget appropriately. Along with that comes cost estimates. So we'll be providing really real-time input based upon different designs and options that for the school that Amber and LKV and the team really put forth. And again, giving you guys that information, make informed decisions. And along with that, value analysis. So really, again, giving options, making sure that we're turning over every stone for you folks. So that gets us through really the pre-construction and construction, right? Now the fun begins, right? Really coming in and this is when we get ready to go out for construction. Of course, we have got to put the project out to bid, and we'll be doing all the advertisement, all the marketing to the subcontractors and the trade partners here in the Treasure Valley, really drumming up the interest to get competitive numbers, how we break up those bid packages, all the work scopes to get those competitive bids in the door and evaluate them, and then assemble into a GMP, guaranteed maximum price, right? Which is essentially the project budget. Same thing, continue on with that value analysis, and then of course, build the darn thing, right? So we'll lead the charge with construction, manage through any changes in the work, and then obviously we have a warranty period. So we'll be here for a year after conducting warranty walks with you folks. Really at a high level, that's kind of outlines our services.
Could I just, Nathan, could you talk really quick? They're going to see two different contracts that you had shared. One with the standard form agreement, and then with the general conditions.
Correct.
Could you give a description of what the two?
Sure. So as Amber had stated, right, AIA, hers is a B133, ours is A133. It's for construction. And really, the A133 outlines essentially more of the project specifics, which obviously right now is blank, right? We got to fill in all that information as we figure it out. And this kind of really talks about the very project specific portions of the details and of the contract. The general conditions, which is the 201, is is exactly what it says. The general conditions covers everything from insurances and different notice requirements and, kind of really the day in, day out, how the contracts to be executed, performed, if you will.
Just wanted to make sure that that was clear because they'll see two with yours there.
Correct.
You mentioned in your note, in your letter that you have a industry-leading EMR of 0.54.
That's correct.
And for those who don't have experience with the X number of days since our last incident, can you help us understand what that is and how that comes by?
Sure. So it's a metric that the construction industry uses to really kind of score a company's safety. And really what it does is it takes the number of man hours that are worked by that company and then it's divided by the number of incidents, right, that occur. So the lower the number, it's like golf, right? The lower the number, the better your score is. And the industry average is 1.0. So we're at 0.54, so roughly, better than approximately 46% of the industry. It's actually even more than that because it's exponentially gets harder the lower you go. And not only that, but if you work a lot of hours, right, your chances for those injuries even go up. So the more you work, the lower your number have. It's actually a lot. It's actually a pretty difficult.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I just want to say, I'm really glad that you mentioned value analysis a couple of times. It seems like all of our building meetings, that's been really a big focus. People just want to make sure their tax dollars are going as far as possible. And I like to tell them we always want to offer them a good, better, best alternative so they can see, here's a square box, here's something kind of nice, here's something really nice. And they feel like just having those options available that they are engaged and it's a more meaningful process. And so I'm really glad that, that's something obviously that'll come up a lot at public meetings.
Yeah, and it's something we do day in, day out, right? And it's really about giving everybody options and informing them with the information to make those the best decisions, And like you said, good, better, best, or these are my wants and these are my have-to-haves, right? And we can't make the decisions for you. We can advise, and that's really where we have to give you everything.
For sure, yeah. Thank you for that.
We good? Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Nathan. Appreciate it. So we will continue working as a group and just keeping the board up to date. And as soon as we've got things that need approval, we'll be putting them in front of you.
Perfect, thank you.
Awesome.
All right. You're not gonna talk about the whole 30 pages, right?
No, thank you.
To
Good night.
discussion of House Bill 521.
No, I do have a summary sheet. I'll just pass on. It's up on the screen there as well. Did I get you one? Okay, perfect. Okay, so the House Bill 521 is actually on the link is on Assembly. I just tried to take it and narrow it down to some of the things that are directly affecting to us. So the way that this works, they're taking $125 million a year from places within the school district, and they are putting that into a bond. Essentially, the state is running a bond to provide these funds for all schools. So the state is going to pay $125 million a year for 10 years, and from that, they'll get a lump sum of dollars right up at the front, just like we would get if we ran a bond. They're using those to be able to put that information out to to put those funds out to all districts. And they have a formula for how they're working through that. They're going to be funds are distributed based on your ADA. So the number of students you have. There are one or two districts that are being capped at 40 million if they have certain conditions met. And these are like the primary example here in the Treasure Valley is Boise. Boise is capped, but West Ada is not.
Wow,
And Emmett, because they have,
well, they're their own funding.
they're their own funding mechanism, correct? They're independent school districts. When you have independent school districts, there's things that happen. Now, some of the independent school districts don't reach the cap with their ADA, but Boise does. And so it really affects Boise, but it doesn't affect us.
So Emmett
Not
and
much.
Boise, they actually, as their own independent school districts, have ability to levy and.
Yes, differently, and a different,
Than we
They're
have.
funded differently than we are.
yeah. And so, like I said, none of the other districts, like in Emmett's not gonna meet a cap because they don't have enough students to reach the amount that would get there. But that doesn't, go against us at all, but it's based on ADA. So the more students you have in the school district, the more dollars you're gonna get for this program.
And did you say you have those calculators or no?
We have general calculations and these are, every time I get these from the state, they're saying, remember, these are calculations. These are estimates based on numbers as they are right now. If there are any,
These things,
what was that?
these things? or
No,
Estimations?
is that the list of how many, of
Yeah.
who's getting what?
Yeah,
Yes, those are estimates.
estimates.
And
Okay.
so for Middleton School District, it's in the $16 million range is what we would be receiving as a result of these funds. One of the things to note is that the maintenance match lottery funds that are being used to generate some of the 125 million. Now, that means that those monies don't come to us for maintenance. And for us, that's about $408,000 a year.
So we're losing that?
We would not receive that in revenue. And that means that from that 16 million, if we take that, and we'll talk about different ways to take it, but if we take that as a lump sum, we still have to plan for approximately $400,000 worth of that money to keep with our maintenance cost, our yearly maintenance. So that's about $4 million that then drops that 16 down to about 12 million that you have to work with on some of these different projects. Bond levy equalization funds will also start to be used to help pay that 125 million. Now, bond levy equalization is something that our district takes advantage of to the tune, it decreases every year as our value of the property values in our district increase. The bond levy equalization
The
decreases.
growth, doesn't that,
What was that?
does the growth affect that?
Yeah, so the growth and property values all cause that to go down. So we've been getting less and less money on bond levy equalization. But we will get that for the next 2 years. So we have 2 years to the last 5, I believe, is where we're gonna be, that will still
When does
be,
the high school,
not be getting the bond levy equalization.
and just
7
on a
years.
side, when is the high school done?
7 years,
Okay.
6 years.
Just
The pop,
15, yeah, we have 6 years left, I believe.
6 years, okay.
yes. So there'll be 4 years that we wouldn't get the bond levy equalization. And Alicia, what is the amount that was this last year for bond levy equalization?
584,000. That goes directly into our bond to help us cover that payment.
Uh-huh.
Now, there's another piece that we'll be receiving in addition to that 16 million that actually will cover that amount that's lost for bond levy equalization. So it's not something that we're going to have to make
Okay.
adjustments to the 16 million for. There is an additional income tax credit. That doesn't really affect us as a district, except that it affects our patrons in terms of their, how much they would have to be paying as an income tax. And then there's additional property tax relief funds. So similar to House Bill 292, which generated for us the $1.6 million last fall that we used to help pay down the bonds so that our patrons didn't have to pay as much in their property taxes. There's a portion of the funds that are allocated with this bill that will increase that amount from the 1.6 up. And there, I don't have an exact number. Do you have a number on that one yet, Alicia?
Yeah.
We haven't received an exact number, but it would be significant enough that that would take the place of that bond levy equalization. and then some.
Okay.
So we,
That's good.
while we won't have the bond levy equalization, but we will have other funds besides the 16 million to help cover that cost for our patrons. So there are two methods for receiving these funds. You can take the funds as a lump sum, and I'm talking about the 16 million, not that additional property tax relief. That will come in each year. But you can take it as a lump sum right at the beginning, or you can have it distributed in annual increments. The caveat to that is if it's taken in annual increments, it's got to be used in the priority order of House Bill 292, which was you have to use it to pay off your bonds, and then your levies, and then you can use it for anything else. So it would not be as beneficial if we were trying to use a large portion of those funds towards building an elementary school. It also would, we would need to take it as a lump sum because we would be expecting to pay those bills for the school in that moment. So we would essentially take those funds at the same time that we were going out and bonding, and putting all those funds together so that.
Basically loan it to ourselves.
Correct. So we would, my recommendation would be, once we get down, would be looking at that lump sum, simply because it puts it all in our hands. And part of the problem too is like the maintenance match and the lottery funds. Well, that's $400,000 that's coming out of that 16 million. If I do it in a distributed annual increment, then I have to use it to pay down bonds and levies. That means I can't use it for those maintenance dollars, even though it's meant to be towards those facilities. So taking that lump sum is probably not just preferable, but it'd probably be the only way we could make it through with the current status that we have.
So theoretically, if we take a lump sum and this, and we bank it and use it to supplement and run a bond, we could use that. We don't have to pay it, we don't have to spend it all in a year.
Correct.
So we can supplement the bond amount with that, lowering the cost of the bond to our.
Correct. So let's just, I'm throwing out just general numbers, hypotheticals. This isn't what we would have to do, but we could set 4 million aside, knowing that each year we're going to take 400,000 out of that to help pay for maintenance. That would take us down to 12 million. Maybe we look at a couple of parking lots that need to be redone. We look at some roofing that needs to be redone, some major repairs to some of our buildings, and maybe we're hitting the 800 to 900,000, leaving us with about 11 million. Then we say, we're going to go and try to build an elementary school for 25 million, but we're going to use 11 million of these dollars, and we're going to use the rest. We need to bond for 14 million. Now that amount that is now a liability for our patrons shrinks considerably because we're using a lump of this towards building that elementary school.
Is there any way to just bonding for the whole 25 million and then amortizing that 11 million out over to pay for it, or is it going to just come out in the water?
I think in terms of clarity for our patrons, we would want to look at going the smaller amount
I think so.
already, just because our patrons are going to go out and vote at the polls, and we would not want, what we don't want to be put ourselves in a position where they think not only have we gotten this money from the state, but we've also tried to take these additional dollars.
It probably would come out in the wash pretty close.
The appearances of keeping it as simple as
Yeah.
possible for that.
Yeah.
But taking the lump sum is definitely a lot simpler and doesn't have all the strings attached to it.
Right. So that's how we would receive those funds. The governor, so each of these bold statements is another piece to this that somebody else put in. Another piece is that the governor's office would appoint the executive director of the state board. Right now, the governor appoints the state board members with the exception of the state superintendent, which is the elected office. And the state board then hires their executive director. They're looking at a shift in that where the governor's office would then be responsible for doing that. Another aspect is we would lose the August election date. It's in that bill that we would no longer be able to run
It's gone.
elections in August.
That's kind of a weird thing to put in there, but okay.
Yeah.
No,
I
The
mean,
next thing along there is that we would not be able to collect additional bond and levy dollars. For instance, right now it's recommended to school districts that they maintain not just that 1 year of payments, but up to the 21 months. Just so that you always know that you are able to make those bond payments in the case that many people didn't pay their taxes and those kind of things that came about. This would change that to where it wouldn't exceed 12 months or 120% of the payment for that year. So that, from what our financial planners tell us, that shouldn't be a problem. Alicia, do you have any other comments on that aspect?
I would agree.
Okay. We would be required to create a 10-year maintenance plan, which we have a 10-year maintenance plan, but it does need to be significantly updated.
Good.
But also the state board will be putting in some provisions of if you need to have these things in that plan, we will probably have to add things just because it was not part of the requirements the last time the plan was required. And then you have the 4-day week, school day week provisions, which I've talked to already.
thank you.
So that is House Bill 521. It's right now sitting on the Senate floor. So we'll see where it goes. And then once, assuming it passes, we'll watch how the board addresses those things, parts of the bill. And then once we get to there will have to be a decision by this board of how you want to receive the funds.
but this also impacts our calendar, correct?
Correct. That was the part that impacted our
The
calendar.
last
That
year.
4 day.
Yep.
Very good.
And just so, I guess, so that you as board are aware, so that the public's aware, I have reached out to our state legislators, to the ones that were in the House at the time when they were working through this bill, trying to see if there was, what kind of flexibility could be placed in there in terms of calendar decisions. I tried to make sure it was clear how we were implementing a 4-day week. The legislators that I was discussing this with didn't have a concern with Middleton as much as other districts, that they were worried about not approaching a 4-day week for the right reasons. Or using the right approach to it. Those are some of the concerns. Because one of the things, the State Department did put out a memo about the kind of the base things that should be in place if you're moving to a 4-day week. And Middleton ticks all those boxes in terms of the minimum hours you should have in specific types of instruction. In the process they use to go about moving to the 4-day week, all of those things meet the criteria that was put out by the state board.
Perfect.
Okay,
All right, let's move on to L.
okay, we're getting there. The proposed Middleton City ordinance, can you bring that up, Lisa? I'm gonna bring that up as well here. Sorry. So Middleton City has, and this is more of for your information as a board to know that this is happening, and if you have any thoughts on it that you'd like me to relay to any of our city council members. So when a developer goes to do a preliminary plat for a new division, a new development or subdivision, there's a list of things that they have to meet when they turn in their application to the city. And what the city is proposing is a change to that ordinance to include, if you'll scroll up, or down. I never know what, you're like rolling up, but you're going down. School is that they're looking to add school capacity to the considerations that a subdivision has to take if it's going to be approved. And the key provision of this is that if the subdivision is in an area with a school that is at 110% of capacity or greater, that it would not be approved by the city. So do you have a question, Cindy? It's fine to jump in now.
Why 110? I'm just curious, why not 100%? Because
I believe when they were looking at that, they were looking at that in terms of having a little bit of flexibility within that, because let's say that you had one student over.
oh, okay.
So you're at capacity and you have now one student over, technically you're above capacity. And so they wouldn't, and it was also a way of saying it's not like we're trying to shut down all growth, but it's when it reaches a serious point that they're looking at. That was the explanation I was giving. And I need to tell the board, the city did reach out to ask me for feedback about this proposal and how it was looking. I gave my input to them in two different settings, just because originally it looked a little bit different than it does now, and there were some things that were on the school district that wouldn't have been practical for us to be able to provide to a developer. This requires us to create an official capacity for schools annually, and how that's going to be addressed. We produce quarterly our at capacity numbers, and we report those out. And so essentially, if it's within, like right now, if there were a subdivision and this ordinance were in place that came in within either Heights or Mill Creek's attendance area, and they were to come to us and say, what is your capacity? We would essentially give them a letter that says, we are at this capacity. Now, we're not telling them you're denied or anything. We're just giving them that capacity because it's not for us to deny it. It's to give them the information, and then the city council makes their decision. This would not be applied to small developments of lots fewer than 5. If they're what they consider infill, which is a small property that's surrounded on all sides by other developments. If it were an infill that was lots fewer than 10, it would not be, this ordinance would not address that. It outlines what is considered capacity, and we're talking about the actual capacity of the primary school without portables. Because that was one of the things initially they had it, the capacity of all the buildings and everything. Well, that becomes self-propagating. You add a portable, and now your capacity is greater. So then you add another portable because you need more space, and it just keeps, you would never meet that level.
That self-perpetuating issue where we got overcapacity, so we're trying to fix it.
Right.
We're under capacity enough to get more.
So I worked with them on that language to make sure that it was clear that our capacity was of the original structure, the permanent structure, and not to include those non-permanent structures. When it talks about total service obligation and calculating based on a student per EDU number, that's our 0.569 figure that we've been using, but that's something that will need to be updating. And so we'll work with Davis Demographics to have something in place for next school year of what that new and updated number would be.
Sounds like our architect might have some good inputs for that as well.
Right, correct. So this is something that's going forward in front of the city council. I was at planning and zoning already, right?
No.
No, does anybody want to?
I think it's the 25th of March.
25th is when it goes to planning and zoning?
They're adding this school capacity onto that
Okay,
preliminary plat. There's other things. they're
on
asking
planning and
for.
zoning's meeting.
Yeah.
So it'll go to planning and zoning, and then it would have to be approved by the city
City
council
council.
after that.
Right.
So, right now, this would only be, this is Middleton City Council. Middleton City Council has been reaching out to surrounding communities, recommending that they make those same kind of adjustments. To this point, I'm not aware of any that are actually moving forward. There are some that are more interested than others. But the ones that would affect us would be the city of Star and Canyon County. And so far, neither of those have been moving forward to adopt a similar type ordinance. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at. Any questions or anything you'd like me to pass along to city council members?
Well, one question, I'm not sure that it addresses, say, for example, we get approval, the voters approve a new elementary school. At what point does that additional capacity be considered?
Right.
And, and with that, we'd have to redraw the district lines.
Right, and we would, in my mind, that wouldn't be something that as a district, we would change a capacity until we have a school that the students are ready to move into. We can provide a letter that gives them a proposed timeline, but we wouldn't even be able to actually calculate the capacity until we've redone any kind of attendance area borders. Which we wouldn't do until we were getting closer to the actual opening of a new school. So I don't believe there would be any change in what we report. How the city chooses to address that might be different if a bond were to be passed and we're in that interim.
It's just, it seems like the ordinance would want to consider that interim.
Right, and I brought that up as the possibility, what about that? And they have not given me an answer at this point.
Okay, I'm just curious. Thank you.
So what you're saying is that building a new school and alleviating some of that, but building that with approved plats, we already should be able to use a multiplier to figure out how full that new school will be.
Right, and we can do that part, but we wouldn't be able to provide the capacity that it's actually, the main part for us is we give them a capacity of the schools within the current,
What it actually is.
what the actual boundaries are. And we wouldn't be making any adjustments to that till very close to the time that we're opening a new
Like a
school.
dangerous game in the middle of that. If they approve a plat for 2,000 houses, and then we filled up we're at 80%, and then other people are going, well, give me another 2,000.
Right,
That's just, I don't know, that's kind of what's gotten us into this position now is a lack of foresight into those types of problems.
right. I'll bring that up again with our city council members so that they're aware.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you. Okay. All right, so let's do the last discussion item.
All right.
I can take this one.
You got it.
So we met, Dr. Gee and I met with some of the board members from the Greater Middleton Parks and Recreation. Spend a little bit of time talking to them. They've been on basically a month, like we don't really have an active lease with them. We're in kind of this weird spot in the middle where we don't know what we need till we need it. And so they were looking for a lease agreement that would extend them enough to have other people comfortable in supporting them and coming in and giving them some aid and planning kind of future events out far enough. But we had some good talks. And within that, trying to figure out what they needed, we ended up with a solution very similar to the way we worked with Dr. Gee's contract. And so what we've done is we've extended them a 2-year contract that's renewable yearly, so that we can look at it together and just kind of see if we can look out that far.
We should say we would
Yeah, we would.
Would
Yeah.
do we haven't.
Within this proposal, we haven't
done
drawn
it.
it up yet, we haven't made a decision on it, but the proposal was that we extend them a lease for this 2-year lease contract with a yearly renewable extension. So every year we would revisit it and extend it another year so that they have a
If we
standing
don't need
2-year.
that. So
However,
they get what they need and we.
yeah,
And that allows us that if
Have the
we have
flexibility.
plans for something that we need to do, it gives them us a lead time and them lead time.
and then it'll include some provisions for like all heck breaks loose and we've gotta get somebody in there pretty quick. And they were super comfortable with that. They were really grateful to have that proposal laid in front of them for a lease option. So that seemed like the most prudent way to go about it.
More opportunities for them too, to have a lease.
Yep.
So,
So any concerns moving forward with that kind of, because what we'll do, similar to what we were doing with our architect and contract manager, we will start putting that contract together this month and having their attorneys look at it and our attorneys look at it to make sure that we're in a good spot.
Yeah, sorry, I misspoke. We did not extend them a contract. We just proposed to them.
Yes. Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
there you
Yeah.
go. All right. Policy review. Are you ready, Lisa?
I'm ready. I'm gonna break this into 2 different sections tonight. Policy 2420 and the procedure that follows. That is just an annual review that we need from the board for federal guidelines. So you'll notice that there really are no revisions suggested to it. We just need to make sure that we put that in front of you once a year. And so with those two, if you don't have any questions about how it currently works, my suggestion would be that we go ahead and just move them forward the way that they are.
Adopt them.
Yep. And then when we look at policy 510, family medical leave, you'll notice a suggestion on there is to change that from July 1st to June 30th to a rolling 12-month period, measured backwards from their leave. Part of the rationale behind it is currently the way that our policy reads, it would allow an employee to take potentially 24 consecutive weeks of FMLA leave. And so going a rolling 12-month back, it does allow that 12-week period in a given year instead of the calendar year, if that makes sense. And so with this one, we do have to give our employees 60 days notice. And so this one, we would suggest we continue to move through to all 3 readings to make sure we provide the allotted amount of time for that change.
Lisa, do you want to explain just a really brief what FMLA?
Sure, yeah, so the family medical leave is leave, it's really protected leave. So if an employee has an injury or something's going on with their family, they can submit for family medical leave, and if they don't have time off, it holds their position in place essentially and helps hold their benefits in place for them as well. And so.
So it's not paying them time, but it is holding their position within the district.
Questions on that one? Okay, and then 5260 abused and neglected, you'll notice the change on that. There was a change in law where employees actually have to report themselves in these situations. So if we have a teacher or a staff member that thinks a child is being abused, neglected, or something's going on, then they would have to directly report to health and welfare or authorities themselves and not through administration. And so prior, the policy read that they would report to their principal, and then the principal would then do the reporting to health and welfare or police or whatever that looks like. They now have to directly report themselves. So part of this is training our staff in that and then giving them the option. I mean, they could sit down together and call if they want their principal involved in that, but just to ensure that they know they have to mandatorily report themselves and not just tell somebody else.
Is there a provision in our process here for our policy to make sure that other people know and not
Yes.
just the teacher and?
Yeah, we left that in there. The only change that we made, you'll notice that it does say that they still will need to talk to their principal. It's still in there, but we just changed to not report. Like they have to directly report, not the principal report.
And then what that might look like is a teacher comes to the principal and says, I saw this and I'm concerned and I feel like something needs to be done. They could actually call right there with the principal there in the room as well And that's kind of how we'll recommend that the process go forward. Because there is still the expectation that they would let the principal know that that was going on. But a lot of times the employee that sees it, it feels like there's support there if they know, and that's one of the reasons they would sometimes ask the principal to make the call. But for the future processes that they might go through, it's very important that the person who saw whatever the circumstance was, make that report.
And I just caught it, when I bring back that next draft, there should be another sentence after that 24 hours. It didn't end up on the one that got attached. So, and that's where that does talk about still.
Okay, yeah, I just think it's really important that a teacher doesn't feel like they've got to go this alone. That's a big lift.
Yeah,
That's a big ask.
absolutely.
Yeah, that is a big ask.
Plus to have a witness there.
So you'll notice
Yeah,
that
that's
is
what I
just
was
hard.
thinking, it's just
In
better
second
if there's
reading,
two
you'll
of
see
you,
that.
Okay,
especially with something like that.
Absolutely.
And so then that would be those four, how I would recommend moving forward with this
Okay.
one.
And then I would recommend that we table the third reading for the transportation policy until April's board meeting. We're just waiting for some information from the state to finish that one up.
Okay, well, let's take care of that. I would entertain a motion to adopt policy 2024-20 and
I need to
you
ask
have a question? Go ahead.
This has to do with receiving Title I funds.
Correct.
Correct?
Yes. It is tied to that, yes.
Are the Title I teachers supposed to be the leaders of this engagement plan with the principal?
So we actually, all of our schools are school-wide title now, so we don't have specific Title I teachers.
Why?
So with school-wide, we have Title I aides and we have different processes. We just don't have a designated Title I teacher per se. And so with the school-wide approach, it allows us to service more students that way. And so I can walk you through what that looks like
And that's,
too.
and maybe give an example
Yeah.
of what targeted assistance is so that it's clear
So with
how that-
targeted assistance, when we did have a Title I teacher, then we would specifically say that Title I teacher could only work with these specific students. It now gives us the ability to work with all students in those schools that are Title I schools, instead of just working with specific students in those schools that are Title I schools.
But there is qualifications to fit underneath and receive Title I services.
It's school qualifications based off the free and reduced numbers and different.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a school qualification, not a specific student qualification. So even before, it was a school qualification.
The school had to, I
Yes,
understand
yes.
that, but you have aides
Yes,
that work with them. Who guides those aides?
yeah, so, it depends on the school processes, so that's where, within our RTI systems, within some of those other components, that's where that guidance comes.
Okay, I'll talk to you about it later.
Yeah,
Well,
because
and maybe-
it's a shift from targeted assistant to school-wide, it's definitely a shift in how we service those
And when did
students.
Middleton make that shift from
Yeah.
targeted assistance to school-wide?
Oh,
Okay, 4 or 5, on that.
16, 17, 18.
Yeah.
It's been a while,
Quite a
yeah.
while ago, yeah.
Okay.
Jesse Holman used to be the Title I teacher at Purple Sage.
Oh,
Yeah. It was during Dr. Middleton's first to second year. Is when
Okay.
that shift happened, yep.
Which that would have
right.
been it.
Well, I had a
So to
lot
go
of,
back
I
to this,
just,
Cindy, though, the
That would've been
team, the principal in the school has a parent engagement team. So there's a team that comes together to review our Title I plan. And within that team reviews the parent engagement component. And then
okay.
they have a committee that works on that. So it's not just the principal, but there's teams of people that work on that together.
So they do have a parent and family engagement
Yes.
policy.
Yeah, as they do their school-wide plan, which is part of their title pieces as well,
Okay.
they have to have parent input there. And so they have a group of people, including parents, that work together on all of those components.
Okay.
And I'll just add two more pieces to that is, the person directing all of that is our federal programs director, Cindy Hutchins.
Mhm.
Oh, okay, so
So she is
So there's someone
managing and making
overseeing.
sure that that's happening at all of our schools.
Okay.
And then the direction of the instruction for those TAs is always with that team that is guided by the certified instructors. So you've got your certified classroom teachers that are giving the instruction of how those specific Title I interventions should be serviced within the school.
Okay,
Any more?
nope, that's it.
Sorry, I went too fast.
No, that's.
All right, now are we ready?
Those three.
So I can move that, we move for policy 2420, parent and family engagement, and policy 2420, parent and family engagement procedures, that they be adopted.
And then,
Is there a second?
Second? Cindy got it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And then policy 5410 and 5260 to a second reading.
5 or 10.
The family medical leave.
Oh, I thought you already said that. All right. I move that
You're going.
policy 5410 and policy, or family medical lead, and then policy 5260 abused and neglected child be moved to adoption.
Second reading.
Second reading, thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Jay?
Aye, it was Jay.
The second?
Jay.
Second?
No,
It was
Jay.
Oh,
Sorry.
I thought she said also.
No. All right, and policy 8010, we need to table.
I make a motion that we table policy 8010, student transportation until next week.
I'll second it.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All right, let's move on to action items. I would entertain a motion to approve or deny the new courses.
I make a motion that we approve the new courses.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
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 The FFA is not on here, right?
Oh, my goodness.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Do we need to add it on there? Can I
Yeah.
just,
It'll need to be action item F,
okay.
but just for completeness, need to make a motion to amend the agenda.
Yes, yeah, that's what I figured. Okay, well, let's go through the other ones first. I would entertain a motion to approve or deny the curriculum adoption purchase.
I move that we approve the curriculum adoption purchase.
Aye. Or
There's-
second.
Jay, that was Jay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I would entertain a motion to approve or deny the hiring of Mr. Hingston as our Middleton Middle School principal.
I make a motion that we hire Mr. Hinkson as our middle school principal.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We love it. I would entertain a motion to approve or deny the 2024-2025 selected dates on the calendar.
I move that we approve the 24-25 selected dates calendar as a proposal.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Action item E, I would, go ahead.
Oh, you're good. No, keep going. I don't know
Okay.
this one. Let Jamie just-
I would entertain a motion to approve or deny the Secure Our Futures Phase 2 grant proposal.
I move that we approve the Secure Our Futures Phase 2 grant proposal.
I'll second it. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. I would entertain
I'm so excited for this.
a motion to amend the agenda.
I'd like to make a motion that we amend today's agenda to include item F, the approval of the FFA trip, approval or denial of the FFA trip.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Now,
I would love to move this.
okay. Go ahead.
Move that we approve the FFA Leadership Convention in Twin Falls.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Perfect. Now, I would entertain a motion to go into executive session. Thank you, everybody.
I move that we go into executive session as per section 74-2061B of Idaho Code to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent.
And we'll go in by roll call.
I still need a second.
Second.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. Did you get that, Cindy?
Trustee Dempsey.
Yes.
Trustee Wagner.
Yes.
Trustee Powell.
Yes.
Trustee Clark.
Yes.
Thanks for coming, you guys.
Thank you.